Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's. At Local Joe's, we help local business. Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's.
This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. Thousands of people are gathering in Lansing today for the annual Michigan Pride celebration. They are members of the LGBT community, their friends and families and allies, and it's not too late to join in. The march to the Capitol begins at noon at Riverfront Park in downtown Lansing. And after the rally at the Capitol, you can join the festival at this year at Riverfront Park after several years in Old Town. Here to discuss progress and what's still to be done on the gay rights front are the clerk of Ingham County, Barb Byron. Welcome to the show for the first time, Barb.
Thank you.
And Jay Kaplan, who's done this before. He is the project director of the LGBT project at ACLU of Michigan. Welcome back, Jay.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's talk about what's been accomplished. This has been a momentous year for gay rights because of the same-sex marriage ruling by the Supreme Court. And for you, Barb, it's been more than a year because it was back in March of 2014 when federal Judge Friedman said that same-sex marriage is indeed constitutional. And there was that narrow window, and I'd like to find out how you heard about the decision and then how things unfolded.
How it happened. So I heard about the decision a little after 5 that Friday night from a reporter, actually, who was interviewing me and asked me if I was going to open that Saturday morning on the 26th. And I said, I don't know how I can. I don't think so. Well, I couldn't sleep, knowing that so many families had been waiting for decades in many cases to get married, and then to have me be the red tape stopping them from getting married. So I remember I sent text messages to my staff at about 3 o'clock Saturday morning and they didn't respond, which we're still dealing with. We're still, because they should be responding.
They were 3 in the morning?
Yes, at 3 o'clock in the morning. About 6 o'clock I received the first response that one of my clerks was going to come in and she would help, and I thought, well, if I have one clerk, then we can do this. So we issued the press release, and I sent out a tweet to let everyone know that we would be open. And it is a result of amazing staff that we were able to serve so many families, and amazing friends that weren't and still aren't afraid to hold my feet to the fire and to support and encourage me to open the office, but then also to support me after I opened the office. We had so many people come down to the historical courthouse in Mason to hand out flowers to newlyweds, to show support, to bring their kids down, to witness the love that was exchanged. The courthouse was full of life on that Saturday. All 3 floors, we had ceremonies going on, and it was an amazing, amazing opportunity to join families together. And the window did close, and so we had to wait for equality in marriage again. But when the door was blown open towards marriage equality, we were there again, and it's an amazing honor to be able to join people together in marriage. It was a tremendous honor to join people together in marriage who had literally been waiting for decades. And even today, I have a marriage ceremony, and it's wonderful to be able to join people together in marriage, and it's even better when families are there and the community is there to support. So,
I asked you the other day how many you've done, and you said you didn't keep track anymore.
I don't because marriage is marriage.
Right.
So I don't keep track of same-sex versus opposite-sex marriage, because it's marriage, and thankfully it's recognized as marriage. All marriages are recognized as marriage. Now, thankfully, we still have Jay because we are hearing some concerns that people still aren't being treated equally. I think marriage equality was the first step. I think we have many steps to go towards equality and protections for all people, but we got down one step. We've gone up one step. There are more steps to go, and that's why I'm so thankful for Jay and the ACLU to continue taking those steps.
And you will be the Grand Marshal at the parade today.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? It's an amazing honor, and I'm so humbled to be the Grand Marshal, but I'm standing there. But there are so many people that should be standing there with me, whether it's my families and the allies and the people who did call me at 3 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the morning that Friday or that Saturday morning. There are many people that should be standing there with me, and so I'll be standing there knowing that there's a good 50 people that should be standing with me at least.
I want to mention to our viewers that if you are a member of a same-sex married couple, City Pulse is going to take a photograph of everyone who wishes to gather under a banner we have, and then we'll run that in City Pulse. So that will be after the rally at the Capitol today. Barb, you grew up in rural Ingham County, and you said something in the profile that Todd Haywood did in City Pulse this week that was very interesting about the perception that just because people live in rural Ingham County, they may not be very supportive of gay rights, or they may not be gay. Or tell us why that is an incorrect perception.
You know, I think we all are taught that we should love each other. And I think that is why you see that the rural Ingham County, we love all people too. Some may need some help remembering to love their neighbor, but I think all in all, we need to appreciate each other and love each other and accept each other. And I think rural Ingham County does. Whether the perception is fair or not, I'm from rural Ingham County and continue to live there with my family, and we love our neighbors because that's what we're taught to do, and that's what's right. And you know, there are my families. I have families, so I call all the couples I marry together as my families because they're mine now. My families are from all over Ingham County. And it's not just Lansing, East Lansing, but I have families in rural Ingham County. I have families right around the corner from me, so from where I live. Loving people are everywhere. We just need to focus on the good and not the bad. And oftentimes the bad gets the press, but love is everywhere. And I'm so thankful to come from a community where there is love and to be afforded the opportunity to join people together.
Have you been subject to any hate mail or negative comments?
I don't think so. Actually, I get some hate mail just in general, just because I'm a little outspoken sometimes, perhaps. But I don't believe I've received any hate mail for my work in performing marriage ceremonies, issuing marriage licenses. I've always followed the law. Maybe a comment here or there, maybe a nasty email, but it doesn't even register on my radar, quite frankly, because I have followed the law and I have done what is right and just. And so as long as I can look at myself in the mirror and sleep at night, then I'm fine.
Well, of course, Jay, this was an incredible year for progress for gay rights. But I know on a lot of fronts there's a lot to be done. So let's start with the ramifications of the same-sex marriage decision. What now needs to be done in Michigan so that is truly fully implemented?
Sure. Well, obviously, this marriage decision is historic, and it's much to be celebrated. Incredible progress that was made on this issue, more than anybody could predict it. So we have to harness that great energy from that celebration and look at the things that need to be done. We need civil rights protections. We need a state law. We need a federal law that make it clear that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity is illegal. And although we have about 40 communities that have local human rights ordinances. They simply can't provide the same remedies and the resources available that a state civil rights law would provide. And we just need that clarity. We need
So amending the Elliott Larson.
amending Elliott Larson.
What are some of the things that need to be amended?
Well, you know, it's pretty simple language. It's adding sexual orientation and gender identity. We're talking 5 words to the statute itself. One of the other things we have to do is there is an effort to create these exceptions to allow individuals as well as businesses to discriminate in non-religious settings based on religious beliefs. We've seen it happen in Indiana. Michigan has identical legislation, the so-called Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA, that's in the pipeline in Michigan. The Michigan legislature passed and Governor Snyder signed into law a bill that permits faith-based adoption and foster care agencies that receive money from the state to act on behalf of the state to be able to discriminate, to refuse to serve families, and to refuse to place children based on religious beliefs, even where that placement might be in the child's best interest. And that's very concerning to us because...
Is there a legal challenge to that?
Well, the ACLU, we're looking into it. I think it raises some very serious concerns about Constitution, separation of church and state, and also, you know, that gives a license to discriminate. So we have to be vigilant for these pieces of legislation and these proposals that would allow individuals to be able to discriminate against. Want me to continue my list?
Well, let's talk about the religious freedom aspect of it, because that does seem to be the rallying cry now of people that we might once have said were homophobic. But it seems now that, no, we're not homophobic, we're just trying to be true to our Christian beliefs. But the ACLU, of course, is known primarily for defending people's rights to express their beliefs.
Absolutely.
Many celebrated cases of that, but what's the difference here? What is the line that people are crossing in the name of religious freedom?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have very, very strong protections in our United States Constitution for freedom of religion. A person is always entitled to hold a particular religious belief, and there's nothing that the government can do to say you cannot have that belief, you cannot believe what you do. But we've never used this First Amendment. We've never said that freedom of religion also means that's a right to discriminate or that's a right to harm other people, particularly in non-religious settings. So let's talk about, we see in the media all the time, the baker who doesn't want to bake a cake for a same-sex couple that's getting married. Now, when you open a bake shop, you're subject to zoning code ordinances, you're subject to health code regulations. If you employ staff working for you, you have to pay payroll taxes, and you have to adhere to non-discrimination laws that you're operating in. You don't get an exemption from any of those things because of your religious belief. You have voluntarily chosen to enter into a particular realm of commerce. Just like the clerk in Kentucky, she's sworn under oath. She has certain duties that she has to administer. Mm-hmm. She might not agree that this is an ideal couple to get married. They could be heterosexual, they could be same-sex, but that doesn't give her the right, because of a particular religious belief, to refuse to do the job for which she has been hired to do. And the same thing holds in this context. And I think a lot of times the media focuses on these individuals saying somehow how their religious freedom is being harmed. I don't think we focus enough on how people are harmed when we allow this kind of discrimination. The fact that you can go to another bake shop, or the fact that you can travel 40 miles to another county and get a license, it doesn't take away the inherent harm that a person experiences when they are rejected, when they're told you're not being treated the same as any other taxpayer, citizen, because of who you are. There's harm. There's definitely harm caused by that.
This is a tough line, though, to establish, isn't it? I mean, for example, if a business didn't want to do business with a gay-owned business,
if a business doesn't want to do business with a business that's owned by a particular race because they feel feelings, You don't get an exemption for that sort of thing. I mean, it's a choice. You voluntarily choose to enter. The realm of commerce is not just, totally unfettered. In other words, it's not unregulated. There are laws, policies that have to be adhered to, and that includes civil rights laws. So it really isn't anything different here. It's just the impetus is people are saying, I don't want to have to deal with certain people. Then don't be in business. You can choose not to be a public business and not to provide those services. We're not telling people go out of business, but you are subject to laws. And just as you can't refuse to serve gay people, just as you can't refuse to serve people because of their race or because of their religion.
And the line is you can say whatever you want.
Sure.
But you can't necessarily act on it.
Right, and you can believe whatever you want. You can still bake that cake or issue that marriage license and believe that homosexuality is wrong and same-sex relationships are wrong. No one can take that away from you, but you can't harm other people.
Barb, you're a politician. You're in the business of, I guess, the art of the practical. What can actually be accomplished? And of course, you've had some pauses where you knew you were probably going to lose, but by and large, do you think it makes sense for the gay community to say, okay, Christians have to bake my cake, when that may really foster ill will?
Well, if you're talking about Christians, we have love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
You're supposed to love all people. And as a business owner, it's bad business to refuse to serve people. I mean, if you're just looking at profit. So I think it's a bad business decision to take a segment of individuals that you don't want to serve. Businesses want to make profit. That's usually why you go into business. You see a service that isn't provided, and that's an opportunity to provide the service and to make a dollar or two, to take away a segment of customers that doesn't make sense. And it's important to note that most Christians, I believe, love all people. Most Christians treat others as they would want to be treated. And it's unfortunate that there's a sliver of that religion that is using their faith as a license to discriminate. That's not what I was taught.
Jay, State Senator Rick Jones in this week's City Pulse used as an example of the different spin on the baker. What if he didn't want to bake a Confederate flag into somebody's cake because it offended him? Is there a difference between that and putting two men together on top of a cake?
Well, I think once again, you're providing a service. Now, if there's a message that is so incredibly offensive that could promote violence or hate, I think there can be some circumstances there. But I think if you have to split hairs, maybe the difference is that you're saying you object to the idea of two people getting married, whereas in the other one you're saying you object to the particular message on the cake. But once again, the bottom line is, you are in the business of providing a particular service. So in other words, you could say, I own a cake shop, I don't put Confederate flags on cakes. I just don't do that. And you can, and that applies to any customers that come in there. But the situation where refusing to provide the cake for a same-sex couple, you are singling out people.
Well, putting the shoe on the other foot, if you're a gay baker or you're just someone who supports gay rights and someone comes in and says, I want a cake that says gay people are inferior. Would that baker have the right to turn that down?
Well, that's so interesting because there was kind of like a setup where someone came in a bake shop. I think the message was a little bit more dramatic than gay people are inferior. I think it was, like God hates fags or something like that, wanted on their cake. And what that baker said, listen, I'll bake your cake, but I'm not going to put the message on. I'll give you the frosting. I'll show you how you put the message on, but you'll have to do that yourself because I don't particularly agree with that message. But I will provide you
And
with
you think
that
he
service.
was legally
Well,
okay?
of course, this was a setup, and so
Yeah.
they sued. They sued, and we'll have to see how that all
so
plays out. I think, Bill, sometimes it's an overemphasis that it's always I'm Christian, and it's based on my Christian belief. But let's apply it to other religions. Let's say a Muslim baker decides I don't want to bake a cake for a Christian person because I think. I think all Christians are bigots, and they exclude, people of my faith. So I don't want to provide them services. See, you go down this slippery slope, and some of the same arguments that were raised during we had civil rights legislation in 1964, we heard from some of the same people. I don't want to have to serve black people because I believe the Bible put us on separate continents, and we shouldn't have to be able to mix in public accommodation settings. So this is not a new argument. Fortunately, it was an unsuccessful argument, and I believe ultimately it'll be unsuccessful here.
Let's talk about other areas now of gay rights. Perhaps the biggest in my mind is transgender people.
Absolutely.
And what rights do they have in Michigan?
Well, obviously they don't have the civil rights protections against discrimination, and they disproportionately are discriminated against in employment, in housing, and public accommodations, turned away from restaurants, turned away by medical providers. But in addition, Michigan has some pretty awful policies. We have one of the worst policies in the country about getting proper driver's license and state IDs. We make it virtually impossible for transgender people to get IDs that accurately reflect who they are. And it causes them to be outed anytime they have to show a driver's license. It causes them to be harassed and discriminated against. Michigan's policy is an outlier. We are totally the opposite of what most states have been doing and what we see at the federal level. Yet the Secretary of State's office, we filed a lawsuit against them, and they're going to defend it tooth and nail. They're not backing down on the policy that they have.
What is their position?
Their position is a position that shows they really don't understand what it means to be transgender. They say they have to keep the license this way because they have to have an accurate record, basically, of a person's genitalia. That's basically what they're saying. But when you actually look at their policy, the policy is so out of whack that transgender people who have actually undergone sexual reassignment surgery, genital surgery, but were born in states that don't allow them to amend their birth certificate, still cannot get the accurate gender marker on their state ID and driver's license. We have a Medicaid policy, blanket exclusion for paying for medications for transgender people. So the poorest of our population who happen to be transgender can't access health care. We have a big problem in our state with private health insurers. Governor Snyder selected Priority Health to be the benchmark plan under the Affordable Care Act for the state of Michigan. Priority Health has an exclusion that they won't cover any medical services for transgender people. So what we're seeing is a lot of private insurers who might have been providing those services in the past saying, well, because the benchmark plan doesn't cover it, we're not going to cover it. So insurers like Blue Cross Blue Shield for smaller employers are stopping providing covered services for transgender people. So it's very, very difficult to get needed health services in our state. And we believe that it clearly violates the Affordable Care Act that says you cannot discriminate against people based on a particular diagnosis. But that's the de facto way things are in the state of Michigan. We have LGBT people, particularly transgender women of color, who've disproportionately been victims of hate crimes, of violence.
Detroit,
Detroit.
I know there have been some horrible murders
statistics.
and
yet our
injuries.
current Ethnic Intimidation Act does not include the categories of sexual orientation and gender identity. So we have a lot of work that we need to do in the state of Michigan. Much to celebrate, but a long way to go. And we have to make that case, and we have to have people telling their stories so our legislators, so our policy leaders really have an understanding. These policies that we're put into place are based on ignorance and lack of understanding of what it means to be transgender. They were come up by, these ideas came up from individuals years ago, and they need to be changed because they don't reflect actual medical and scientific knowledge that we know what it means to be transgender, and they're not working for our transgender citizens. They're not working for their lives, and it just makes life more difficult for them.
Barb, I know the county clerk doesn't issue driver's licenses, but do you deal with this transgender issue in other areas?
Well, so I hold all the birth certificates, and if there's going to be a change to a birth certificate, it needs to be done through the state of Michigan, the Office of Vital Records. So I don't have the opportunity to assist people in regards to their birth record. We are able to assist in regards to marriage records. We have received some communication in regards to death certificates, which I have to again refer to the state and work with the state to make sure the death certificates are accurate. It's extremely unfortunate that we have so many people that even in their death, they're disrespected. You know, we've heard stories about some transgender individuals who even in their death were disrespected, and
They're misgendered.
they're misgendered, or their obituary is incorrect, or their parents could have been much more understanding. It's heartbreaking. Because when people are disrespected, even in death, that tells me that we have so much further that we still need to go.
We're seeing, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and I think that's why people need to share their stories, and we need to make sure that we're sharing our stories with state legislators, but also city council members and county commissioners, because those are the next legislators usually. We need to be sharing our stories with everyone so that people start to understand that it is who we are inside, and we need to love all people, because all of us come in different colors, and that's why the rainbow is such a great symbol for love and acceptance and equality.
We, because of the Caitlyn Jenner situation, there seems to be a lot more attention now being paid to the transgender issue. But Jay, what else is on the front burner?
Well, I think obviously same-sex couples can get married now, but that decision doesn't help same-sex couples who were in relationships prior to the decision, who might have broken up, who had families. For years, the state of Michigan, through our courts, through our laws, ignored the existence of these families and the relationships between parents and children. And we still have that problem. So if you had a couple that broke up and are longer together before the marriage decision, the issue about if they had children together, only one legal parent is recognized by Michigan law. And unfortunately, that one parent holds all the cards. So if they decide, I no longer want my former partner to see my child, they can do so. And because the law is so bad in Michigan, that other parent, that other co-parent doesn't even have legal standing to try to request parenting time in court. And that's wrong. That's wrong because it denies the existence of that parent-child relationship. It denies the existence of that family. And, there's a presumption in divorce law that it's in the best interest of the child to have continued contact with both parents. So we're still seeing the residue of all these bad policies, throughout the years that said, you don't exist. And we still have to find a way, both through our courts and through our legislature, to deal with those scenarios, because not everybody was able to get married. And the fact that we have that now doesn't necessarily help some of the couples that were, before then.
Well, we're just about out of time, unfortunately. Barb, again, congratulations on being named the Grand Marshal. I look forward to seeing you at the parade. That starts at noon at Riverfront Park in downtown Lansing. Jay Kaplan, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for doing it again. And I wanted to tell our viewers that City Pulse's radio show has moved to a new time and a new day. And in fact, we will start at 10:30 a.m., just a few minutes from now, on the Impact. So if you want to get more of City Pulse, you can turn on your radio. But we'll be back next week. Don't forget to watch us on TV, too. Until then, have a great weekend.